Okay, bienvenido de Guatemala. Tengo gallos. We have a bunch of roosters crowing and dogs barking, and the world is waking up. It's only about 6 o'clock in Guatemala. I'm on Lake Atalan, Guatemala, in the city of San Pedro, in the country of Guatemala. Okay, I'm going to talk today about how to basically the word recover is a hard word to use, but basically to put your trauma into a manageable state. Okay. I think all traumas go into how would you say, a remission. Okay. It's kind of a difficult thing. Um, all of you, you, and me, will call this a lot of babble, psychobabble. You're going to insult it. You're going to basically think I'm stupid until you want to truly stop being angry, confused, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Otherwise, go do something else if this makes you angry because you're not quite ready to let go of your anger. Okay. And it's kind of humorous to me because Schadenfreude is watching somebody choose to hit themselves with we sometimes say, take the club out of your hand. You keep hitting yourself on the head, right? If you do the same thing every day and you expect a different result, that's insanity. Okay, staying too busy to think is denial. And the normal 90% of the recommendation is stay busy. That is the worst possible recommendation you can have for getting over some sort of trauma. That just is putting it into denial. It puts it on hold, and it's still in the back of your mind, right? You're basically subconscious. So staying busy to me is the idiot advice, okay? And that's 90% of advice, okay? Okay, it's like being a time bomb. It makes you into a time bomb because somebody's going to trick your trigger and you're going to trip your trigger and you're going to get really angry. And that's how you know there's a trauma, because normally anger and fear are kind of the same thing, right? Fear is just anger. People that are really afraid get angry. But it's a time bomb. The worst advice, and I'm going to keep repeating this, is to stay busy. When we give time to our trauma, we own it. So if I say, my mother died, whatever, or my father died, or, I got a divorce or whatever, and if you give time to discussing it, that started, it's having your subconscious mind come out, okay? I'm going to try to remake this video. So this is episode 1. I'm going to try to remake this until I'm at the level of like a TED Talk, right? Because it's very, I'm not that great a talker, right? I basically ramble and go on, but I will continually, every so often remake this video. No, please note, it's emotionally painful for me to explain, own, and talk about my traumas, same as anybody else. I'm not Superman. I'm just a human, okay? These traumas are little nails in my brain, as is that chicken, rooster. I'm supposed to say rooster. My biggie trauma, Andy's biggest trauma. I have many, and I made a video the other day of all my traumas. I talked about an hour. I have many. Right now, one of my major problems is I just closed down a business of mine that I worked on for 23 years and lost everything. But I'm not going to talk about that. My biggest trauma is riding a moped in Fort Wayne, Indiana. In the winter, I put on these goggles, I wrap my head in a scarf, I put on a jacket, and I go riding the mopeds, kind of scared out of my brains that the thing's going to slide. Because a moped is under 50 cc's, and in the state of Indiana, I could ride that without having a license, okay? But why? It was my 5 years of shame. Every single day for 5 to 6 years, I had to be seen looking like an idiot, okay? And 6 years of shame. Driving drunk, I got put on, because I got my third DWI or whatever it was. It's all according, it's negotiable how you call DWIs, but I got a drunk driving and I got put on house arrest, where I had to pick up the phone every time they called. And I had these guys come look at my pecker while I pissed in a bottle. I mean, and they loved it. These house arrest officers, all except one, just love to come and make you feel humiliated. Okay, people really like power, but what can I say? And I had to basically eat it, right? I had to eat the fact when everyone avoided me, including when I was on that moped. Everybody included me, including the people in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with me because they basically associating with a person that is obvious has a problem riding a moped makes their social class go down, right? So I couldn't even get a ride from these guys most of the time. I eventually just refused to ever ask for a ride because it was like the way to get somebody to do a power stroke to say, go get a life, asshole. And I was like, it didn't matter how many years I was sober. Sometimes I was sober longer than people. I mean, I was sober for 4 years, and there's people I might want to ride from that was sober for a year, right? But I stayed sober for 3 years. Then I went and got drunk. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it made me a better man, okay? But I deserved absolutely everything that happened to me. I was a danger to society, okay? So this is my big trauma, okay? And how did I get over it? I mean, how am I capable of sitting here on, I don't know, going live and talking to everybody and admitting that I was on house arrest for a year, that I drove around on a moped at Fort Wayne, Indiana. Why? Because it's no longer even me, okay? It's an issue, right? It's 36, 37 years ago. Well, I guess I've been sober for 37 years, so it's been 32. I've only been with a driver's license for about 30 years, okay? So 30 years I've had a driver's license. But the simplified solution to trauma, talk until you no longer feel or talking about your trauma. Okay, you talk. Basically, talk to Wilson at, soccer ball or whatever you want to do. Talk to the volleyball ball. Talk to anybody. Talk until you no longer feel. It's called habituation. Habituation is the word that is the, psychobabble term, right? But talk until you no longer feel like talking about that. That's a simple solution. That's not quite that easy, right? Who? Anybody, because we're sick as our secrets. Okay, one of the things when somebody starts having secrets, or I know they're talking about a secret, I consider it a mental kind of an issue, right? And anybody that has any kind of thing that they're hiding and they don't want to talk about it, they're like a landmine. You actually get them to talk about it, and they'll avoid you for the rest of your life because we're only as sick as our secrets. How many times do I talk about the trauma? You talk until it's just like talking about anything else. I can talk about my alcoholism because I don't really care, right? I mean, but I'm bringing it up now but people always go, Andy, blah, blah, blah. And I go, I don't give a crap about my alcoholism, right? They care much more than me because 90% of the people I talk to that drink, yeah, they know they have some issues about their drinking. They know that sometimes they drink it. But people with traumas have to listen 100, 200,000 times until they learn. And this is the hard part. You have to listen to somebody that knows how to deal with that trauma. Okay? If you knew how to solve the problem, you wouldn't need... People think that they can solve a problem with the same brain that created the problem. Okay? My brain created that problem of alcoholism. I mean, there's traumas like being in a car accident. Like I broke my femur when I was 21, which is a different type of trauma, right? These are a little bit easier to get over with because they're not social shame problems, right? But you can't solve a problem with the same brain that created the problem. But I enjoy it when people get angry. Why? Because I start to know who they are. I know that, and I also say, but there, but for the grace of God, go on. Okay, because when I see somebody lose it, go ranting, screaming, I know that my peace, my contentment, my serenity, my clarity of mind is thing. When I see a smile on my face, when I'm having a good hair day like today, I feel better, right? But trolls, people that are flamers on the internet, they're traumatized people. People that attack people that are trolls are angry and they want revenge, and it's a safe way for them to attack somebody. They basically are very, very angry and they're traumatized. Something is there. Like, I don't know the trolls that troll me. I mean, I don't know these people that try to flame or whatever you want to call this, but they are obviously with an issue, right? And they want to attack somebody normally that they can feel can take it. Okay, they don't really attack the the innocent, the really poverty. When I was in Lake Ethel, I was on the thing, and this guy attacked an older woman. I was really kind of amazed because if you attack, like you kick a dog, I mean, come on, that's just evil, right? But when people pick on people that are defenseless, that is really, I'm not defenseless, right? But the five signs of trauma. Okay, so what we got to do when we have a trauma is first thing we got to do is own it. Okay, and most people are in complete denial. They're going to stay busy, 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 busy until maybe after a while they stop feeling because they just. But it takes years to deal with the trauma when you just stay busy. People that don't read, people that can't watch a movie, that have to be doing something all the time, or it's kind of a psychosis or something. Staying busy to even working. Some people have to work all the time because it's the only thing that keep them busy, so they don't think, right? Solitary confinement in prison is kind of interesting because people will kill themselves because they have to be alone with themselves. Solitary confinement is a big punishment in a prison or jail or anything. Why? The person's got to be alone with the self, with the person they hate. Okay, and that is what a trauma does to you. It puts you in a. But there's signals of people doing it. So when you have a friend or you're talking to somebody, these are some signals to know that these are the simple signals. Okay, there's all sorts of subtle signals. There's some people that are really good at masking their traumas, but everybody has a trauma. I don't care what they say. By the time they get to be 50 years old, they've got 2 or 3 pretty good buttons, right, that you can press that can make them go crazy, right? Okay, anger. That's the first one. When people are, you're walking around on eggshells around a person, they got a trauma, okay? That that they can go berserk really quick. Ranting, fear. Fear is anger. When people get really afraid, they get angry because it's fight or flight, right? They have to get their adrenaline going because they're afraid. Avoidance. That's a very common. That's staying busy. Avoidance is the more subtle way of dealing with trauma. Repeating words. When you hear somebody talk about the same topic over and over and over again, I actually will go 6 times, 7 times, 20 times. So many times I can't think about it. Okay, I'll never. But when you hear one of your friends or somebody repeating the same phrase over, like all women do this, or all men do this, or whatever, that I'd say kind of a generalization of a trauma. Okay, and but the seven deadly sins, I'm going to call them the 7 whatever, the 7 obsessions: lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. These are your basic signals of trauma. Okay. This is a serious subject, but I want you to think of it as being a journey into emotional health, okay? It's not something wrong with you. It's you being normal and needing to talk about it, okay? But the simplified recovery, the simple solution, again, hang around with people with the same trauma who have been free of the signals of trauma for more than 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years. The worst thing you can do is talk to somebody in the same level of anger as you, and you guys sit around and have a synergy of being angry together. You gotta find some person that's been dealt with this, like the cancer or the car accident or your parent dying, and they don't really want to talk about the misery, but they're just really grateful that the situation's over, and they're basically talking in a calm thing. And these people are going to drive you crazy, okay? Because when you are in a trauma, you want somebody that wants to give you sympathy. You want to be a victim, and anybody that's a nerd enough to actually give you good advice is the contrary person. People do not want to get over their traumas. It's contrary to what you think. They want somebody to listen, and they want somebody to give them sympathy, and they basically want some brain buzz going on, an endorphin rush talking about it. But if you really want to get over your trauma, and you're sick and tired of being confused and whatever, you're sick and tired of bringing up the same thoughts in your brain, because that's what it is. It's thoughts. It's an emotional problem. It's not the end of the world. It's just a trauma that we have to deal with. And you got to find somebody safe to talk to. And trust me, very few people are safe, okay? But generally, the safe people are people with the same trauma. So like a rape victim needs to, because, they're going to be on touch and go, and you use the wrong word, and then people trigger and they go crazy. So, I can't empathize with rape, right? Share your story until it becomes boring. When these people stop annoying, okay, when the people that you're talking to that have the same trauma stop annoying you, that knows you're finally getting to the point where it's a remission. You're actually enjoying talking to people that have put their traumas in remission, or they're kind of in recovery. People that are hyping you into a frenzy, getting you angry, they are not part of the solution. They're part of the problem. So we got these two corners. We got this part of the problem and part of the solution. And 90% of the people you're going to talk to are part of the problem. Okay? It's kind of amazing sometimes. But some people are addicted to their traumas, and they will be a victim for the rest of their life, and they'll never get over it. And they'll basically look for anybody that they can talk to about their trauma. But screwed up mentally people like to talk to screwed up mentally people. People that are alcoholic, that are basically, if you're married to an alcoholic, in a lot of ways, you're also mentally an alcoholic. It's a thinking problem. It's a family disease. If you're a drug addict, you're a drug addict. You look for more drug addicts. If you're I don't know, a sexaholic, you're looking for more sexaholics. Whatever, if you're a workaholic, you like other workaholics. Basically, we try to surround ourselves with the same dysfunctional people as we are. Okay, it's kind of interesting. But a functional person, there's functional ways of coping with things like going and jogging when you're stressed out instead of eating, right? Overeating is like the number one trauma that people are doing. Because when you get to be about 300 pounds or something, come on, you stick out like a sore thumb, and you're kind of an oddball, right? When you get to be 400 pounds, yeah, don't shame them. Don't fat shame them. Wait a minute. They're already shaming themselves and they don't want anybody to comment on the fact that the emperor has no clothes. He's weighing 400 pounds and he waddles down the road. Okay, I'm Andy Lee Graham, and I was a philosophy major in university with a minor in psychology at Indiana University. That doesn't mean anything, but I have experience. Okay, I have experience in understanding some of these psychobabble terms, but I am not fixed. I am not okay. I am still broken. I must accept this and remember my last drink. That's what they want you to say. And when I was in, where was I at? Huatulco, Mexico. And I went to this meeting, and these guys kept talking about their last drink, and they've been sober for 25 years. And I go, guys, that's kind of simplified. Stay afraid so you stay sober. That's still kind of part of the problem, not part of the solution. I wanted to talk about how to be emotionally, spiritually, physically more powerful, right? I didn't really want to talk about my last drink. I can't hardly even remember my last drink. But the reason why people want to remember the last drink is so that they can be afraid, okay? And that keeps them sober. But when somebody's talking about their last drink and they've been sober for 30 years, I'm going, I don't know. I don't get it, right? But when you're talking about your trauma in a negative sense, 10 years afterwards, 11, when you're talking about your marriage and you talk with vehement, I can't say the word vehement, with real anger about your ex-wife or your husband, 10 years after, you've got some serious emotional issues, right? It shouldn't be that poignant. It shouldn't be that big a deal. 10 years later, the time should have eased the pain. I want to say I still go to AA. I go to AA because I'm only putting in a remission. But right now, I just go because it's like getting a booster shot, right? It's a fun thing. I go see a bunch of my friends. We talk about all sorts of funny stuff. And it's just basically a sharing. And it's really a lot of fun. It's like going to happy hour for mental sanity, right? It's kind of fun. But I don't ever want people to, I have people say, well, you don't go to AA anymore. I go, you don't get it, okay? You never put your traumas completely in the corner. But a trauma is kind of like having a big room with 100,000 books in it. Or maybe let's say we got a room and there's books on all the walls. And each one of those books represents a little corner to your trauma. And so what you have to do is you have to go pick up those books, and you keep reading all those books until you went into your brain and you found all the little triggers, okay? And you basically talked them out until they're basically all those little books that are in that room have been addressed. Some people came from a family where they were sexually abused. Their fathers are, transgender. Their mothers are, prostitutes. There's some people that come from really bad families. I was very lucky that all I had to do is kind of remember what my family was like before, because I had a good family, stayed married about 35 years. But the big signal of real difficult situation has been people hate their children, they hate their mothers, they hate their fathers, they hate the church, they hate the school. I mean, it goes on and on. It's crazy. But there are people. My mother and father never really drank, but I consider them alcoholic because it's a thinking problem. The symptom was drinking. My symptom was drinking. My mother's and dad's problem was probably, eating, right? Okay. But I've been sober for 37 years. Okay, that does no drugs, no alcohol. Well, no alcohol, only coffee. I definitely call coffee a drug. Okay, but there's different intensity of drugs, like coca leaves, different things. But I don't do cocaine or I don't know, smoke marijuana. I have no desire to have an altered sense of reality. I don't think it's going to make me a better person, okay? It's not going to, Carlos Castaneda is a separate reality, blah, blah, blah. Is that I live in a separate reality because I keep changing the feelings where I'm at, right? I love the rush of going to a different place. But before I was sober for 37 years, I was sober for 3 years, and I was doing cocaine with my girlfriend. And it wound me up, and it made me forget that I had a problem, right? And I was doing cocaine. I never liked marijuana, but I've done every drug, marijuana, pot. I mean, I've done acid. I've done almost everything, right? I was quite a bad boy. Okay, but so in the last 40 years, I barely drank. I drank about 3 months, and that 4 months cost me 5 years of riding around in complete shame, right? And there's nothing worse. I did a thing yesterday where I was trying to talk about being a adventure traveler, and I laid down in the middle of the restaurant. And they go, if you cannot emotionally lay down and have everybody in the middle of the restaurant look at you, you're owned by the people. Okay, they basically influence you at such a high level that you cannot be completely independently mentally. But I'm at the strength level now mentally that I can it's very difficult for a person to get into my brain. Don't get me wrong, I do not enjoy insults. I got an insult the other day that I had to really call somebody up and talk about. Okay, so what did I do? I talked about my screwed up life for almost 20,000 hours. Okay, I was trying to calculate it, how many times I went to a meeting and had a discussion. So, again, the simple solution is to talk with somebody with the same problem. If you have a rape victim, you have to talk with a cancer victim or whatever you want to call it. I don't like the word victim. If you are, because that gives you an excuse to look for sympathy, right? If I have a mental affliction, whatever the thing is, everybody has one. You got in a car accident. I got in a car accident when I was 21 and broke my femur. I'm still dealing with it. And at age 65 plus, it's getting to be a bigger problem than it was when I first got thing. But I talked for 20,000 hours until I no longer cared that I was a recovering alcoholic, right? I no longer cared when I had a girlfriend try to insult me. You're an alcoholic. And I go, this is not even an insult. It's actually a benefit, okay? But there are many traumas, and in this link that's going to be in the description, I have a link that goes to like an hour of me talking about my many traumas. Oh man, I was actually sitting in the shower remembering some other traumas. We are sick as our secrets. But how do I get over a trauma? I own it, and then I start talking with somebody, hopefully, that I trust and similar, that's not going to insult me, that's not going to say two things: stay busy, or don't you understand that that's pretty stupid? It's not a logic problem. It's an emotional problem. Logic will not solve it. The only thing that'll solve it is if we slowly accept and think about it until we no longer feel about it, until we emotionally deal with it, emotionally feel it, emotionally over and over habituate ourselves to the feeling of going through that trauma. See, when we talk about it, we live through the trauma again. In that movie, Good Will Hunting, they both, Robin Williams and Goodwill, which let's see, what's his name? They actually started crying, and basically, he says, you know, Robin Williams is saying he kept repeating a phrase until the guy said, "Yeah, it's okay, it's okay, okay." But we have to talk and emotionally feel. Avoiding those feelings is denial. Staying busy and thinking it's logic is just the dumbest advice. It's nothing to do with logic. It's an emotional issue, okay? Yes, logically we know we shouldn't, we should be not thinking about our wife 10 years later. But if we're rambling away, ranting about our wife, the wife's rambling about her husband, I sometimes go out with women that are divorced and I'm going, gee whiz, they start going off on their ex-husband. And I said, I'm going to resemble your ex-husband because I'm a man. And I says, I've actually taken a woman, started going for the nice restaurant and thought, this is a waste of time, and took them back home and dropped them off because this is not what I want. I'm looking for a fun relationship. But a lot of people, but again, we want to find somebody with a proven record. Just because they have the same problem doesn't mean they got over it. And this is what dysfunctional people do, is they find somebody with the same level of sickness as they are, okay? And they're not going to get over it. If a person's never been fat, don't listen to advice on how not to be fat. If a person has never been raped, don't listen to them. You listen, but you keep your mouth shut. If a person has never lost a child, don't listen. If a person has never been an alcoholic, don't listen. Insert your trauma. Okay, what I'm saying here is you can listen, but you don't want to get hooked into a dysfunctional conversation with somebody it's going to turn into a war, right? I mean, as we don't empathize with all the words and the trigger words of rape or something, I'm going to accidentally say something. I mean, only by I've dealt with thousands of people with mental and emotional problems. So I kind of know what trigger words to do. Sometimes I want to trigger them to prove that they're not. I'm not above triggering somebody to say, hey, you have an emotional problem. The minute that I can trigger you so easily, if I can trigger somebody in 5 minutes, I know they have a problem. Listen, but do not reply to these monkeys, okay? Forgive them. They do not know what they do. When somebody wants to tell you how to stop a trauma and they have no idea of being fat, they have no idea of getting bit by a dog. There's dogs and cats and chickens and turkeys. The greatest advice I ever came from was from ignorant fools, from people that I hated, who spoke the truth. All I need is somebody to say the right word. The way self-help groups go is you bring up an issue and they go around the room, and one of those answers is the answer you need to hear. So you got to listen to 20 wrong answers to get the one good answer. It's like mining an emotional, and so sometimes it's just brilliant answer. Just somebody says it in the way that you need to hear it. But trauma defined. Trauma is a negative experience that we do not forget. Trauma is a negative experience that we do not forget. You don't get to forget traumas. I was in intensive care for 10 days in Bloomington Hospital on morphine, and I almost died. My mother and father lived through that trauma. I was brain dead, morphine, right? I lived in the 7 weeks in the hospital, tied to a chain, tied to a bed with getting constipation and having my leg broken and in traction, right? I remember that, but I don't remember dying. Okay. Big note. It's not possible, in my opinion, to learn to help. You can't learn to help somebody. You can learn a little tricks, but psychiatrists that never had a trauma are not going to really be able to deal with many traumas. On the other side is a lot of people become psychiatrists, counselors, consultants because they want to save themselves. Like right now at 37 years, I don't want to save myself, right? I'm not saved, but you can see it. We have to have an experience of giving the same inch. It's like a business advisor. A business advisor that's gone through bankruptcy can help you understand how to go through bankruptcy, right? A business advisor that's gone through getting attacked by the IRS can explain. A person that buys stocks, made a lot of money by buying stocks, can teach you how to buy stocks. Just because you get a degree doesn't mean you're anything. People will act as if they know something while practicing their trauma. So you got to be real careful with the people that are just part of the problem, okay? They're really dangerous. Sympathy will kill people. Enabling people will kill people. Just sitting around and feeling sorry for somebody will kill them. You got to say, hey, enough of this crap. You stop talking about this. I'm not going to deal with you until you do something, right? I don't believe a person can study in university, get a PhD, become a doctor or a psychologist, a priest, a preacher, or a person with any title. They cannot do anything. That a physical therapist doesn't understand how to deal with I broke my femur. I needed a physical therapist. Physical therapy is just a person that studied it. They didn't actually do the therapy to get over the physical problem, right? They don't understand all the emotional issues to go through it. You got to kind of find somebody with a similar situation. But again, discernment. How do you know this person's really over it? Or are they just hyping themselves up, talking about it? When will Andy Lee Graham prove I have recovered from alcoholism? And not only in remission. How will I prove that I'm recovered and I've solved my alcoholism? If I die sober. That's the only time I'll prove it is if I die sober. I will thank the good gods that I didn't ever use an excuse to drink. I didn't let anybody get in my brain far enough to try to give me an excuse to drink. There's no excuse good enough to drink. But technically, I probably would never drink again. I'd just kill myself, right? I'm not going to drink. I'm going to kill myself and get it over with, right? Um, if I am your consultant on alcoholism, I'm going to finally say, what am I going to say if you call me up and you want consulting on alcoholism? I'll do it. $50 an hour, maybe $100 an hour, maybe $200 an hour. Why would I charge so much? Because I'm going to tell you to go to AA. Eventually, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say, just go to AA. And this is talking to me is kind of a waste of energy. You can go to AA every day, 5 times a day. But what happens to the rich and famous? They can't go to AA. They can't. Drug addicts that are, these people like Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain and these people that kill themselves. Drugs and alcohol is a fatal disease. It's covering up depression. Okay. And the rich and famous have trouble because they, like, say you're a doctor or you're an attorney and you become an alcoholic. What do? You just get sicker. Okay. You need somebody that doesn't have the brain problem to tell you how to not have the brain problem. And that's a tough one because the people that get the sickest are like the gorgeous women. Gorgeous women are always having somebody telling them they're okay. Okay? They get really brain dead. Okay. Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain killed themselves. This guy that was on Friends that basically died, sounded like he had a problem. It's kind of negotiable why he died. Maybe, they have trouble when everybody is telling you you're a great person. It's hard to say, I got a problem. There's a saying, I've never known anybody too smart, too dumb to get sober, but I've known a lot of people too smart to get sober. There's a lot of people that believe they're smart enough to solve their own problem. Einstein had a comment about that. You basically cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that's caused the problem. This is really hard to understand, but your brain is the problem. The only way to get the answer is to go outside your brain, and you need to have somebody explain in a way that you understand that. And you need to have somebody sometimes smart enough to defrag your brain, right? But we have to talk until we no longer feel. Rape victims help rape victims. Fat people that are now thin help people that are overweight. Cancer victims that are happy and recovered. Car victims. You got to find your kind of right, safe place. And it's getting to be very difficult because everybody on the planet is becoming a troll. The solution: no excuse is plausible. When you get to the point when you start talking about your ex-wife and you just stop yourself because you go, nope, I'm over this. No excuse, it's finished. No excuse is used. Problem versus solution. You always got to separate this into the problem thing. And you understand how I'm repeating things? Why am I repeating things? It's because the brain refuses to accept. It's denial that it's a problem. You almost have to have it rammed through your brain that you have an emotional problem. That's why Schadenfreude, when I kind of consider it funny when you're kind of in a banner thing and you can use that one term and the person's you're walking around an eggshell and you can just trigger them a little. And you can say, hey, why are you getting angry? And maybe the person might, if you're their friend, they might actually address it. You're never recovered, you're really in remission. Okay, what I'm telling right now is what I call the propositional style. Okay, I write and talk in a proposal style that maybe I could be wrong, right? I am not the right answer for everybody. What I'm hoping I'm ringing true to you or whoever has the problem, right? But if you don't, go do something else. I have people get really angry at my videos and I say, you got that mouse, just click and go do something else. You don't need to attack me and try to get revenge, right? But trolls hate what they see in themselves. So if they failed at getting sober, they're going to be really angry. I'm going to get some hate mail, right? I will change what I believe if another better way comes forward. And this is the evolution of understanding of yourself. You have to totally accept that tomorrow's a new day. One day today, this is what I believe today. Tomorrow could be a new belief, right? Art versus fact. It's no factual way to tell somebody how to get over a trauma. It's an art to talk to somebody. Art is true in an anecdotal way. Facts are never debated. I mean, a fact is like the distance from here to the moon. I mean, these are facts, right? Doctors, psychiatrists, PhDs, I call them pompous humility deficit people, PhDs. They have no humility to admit that somebody could in today's world. What's interesting is it's never been a better time. You can do a deep dive on any subject. You can do a deep dive on, like dehydrators. I was talking with the eternal person on live, how to make a dehydrator. You can watch 50 films, videos. You can read 50 books on dehydrators till you become an expert. We are now capable of understanding sciatica. You can study sciatica until you solve the problem. My sciatica has been in remission for almost 12 years. I studied it until I solved my personal problem. Okay? I studied it. There's never been a time where where there's so much information at our fingers, right? Anywhere on the planet. And these psychiatrists, you can know more than a doctor on your issue, okay? They can't be an expert at every single issue. I'm a real estate expert, but I cannot be an expert at, I don't know, trust funds on, whatever. I don't know that much about it. I would have to go study. But some people think they're God. They're all-knowing, omniscient, all-powerful, and they never should be questioned. A person that doesn't have the humility to be questioning that they cannot learn. There's a lot of problems with doctors and lawyers and any experts is that they cannot learn anymore. Don't get me wrong. I get kind of upset when people start talking about travel as I suppose like they're going to give me a great suggestion. And they have no humility to say, Andy, you probably already know this, but I thought I'd bring it up. Empathy versus logic. Again, this is not a logic problem. It's an emotional problem. Logic is not going to solve your traumas. It's not a logical problem. It's an emotional problem. We have to have the empathy to understand and share the feelings. And sympathy is going to kill people. People ask me what to do when they got a person that's an alcoholic. I sometimes say, send them a case of whiskey. They'll reach their bottom faster. You can't do anything. You just have to accept it and go do something else. Basically, the refusal to love this person, the pulling away from love is what will get them sober, okay, or getting them to give up their trauma. If you've said, you've talked about your divorce, you talked about your trauma, you talked about your rape, you talked about it to the point where the people will no longer talk with you, then you start going, I guess I'm sick and tired of this. I should go do something else, right? But discernment. There's these words. Discernment is to be able to make these decisions. It's considered a gift in the Bible, discernment. I call it going betazoid. Betazoid is the empath of the planet Star Trek and Deanna Troi in Star Trek Next Generation. The empath to feel what another person feels. People die from sympathy. Why does AA work? Why does NA work? You spend a lot of time with the same trauma, with the same affliction until you learn to think like they do. And then you start fitting in, and they no longer seem like a bunch of nerds. They seem like the guys with the solution. People that come into meetings hate everybody for the first 2 years, really. Then after that, they love everybody because they finally adjust their brain. They have a problem. The people that have been sober for 10 years don't have a problem. But the people, they basically think that they come into AA like they know everything. And you're going, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But you just get to listen. Eric, one of the sponsors I had, he was at the Little Chef in Midland, Michigan. And I was talking with all these losers. And he says, I started talking to Eric. He says, are you going to come over at the winner's table? I said, are you going to leave those losers and make that jump over to the winner's table? Because even in any kind of self-help group, you have the losers and the winners, right? The ones that are going to go back out and drink, and they basically talk about somebody else's fault, somebody else's fault. Walk away from the losers and join the winners. Losers are contagious. They are the problem. One time, Eric, somebody brought up, somebody killed themselves. Actually, a guy that was working for me. And this guy says, "Oh, this is really sad. This is really bad." And he says, and Eric goes, "This is what happens to the losers in this program. They die." And he goes, "That's pretty rude, Bubba." He says, then Eric just goes, "Maybe you're a loser. You come on, get it in your brain. You're either going to be a loser or a winner. If you're going to be feeling sorry for Robin Williams, Anthony Bourdain, or somebody killing themselves, they're the losers. These guys lost it. They didn't win the game. Okay, they lost. They're not to be looked up to. You got to look at Anthony Bourdain and anybody that commits suicide as a loser, because unless you want to be like them and kill yourself, okay. Anger, fear, anger, fear, anger, fear. Remember these things. Anger and fear are signs of trauma. We refuse to forget it. Trauma. But trauma is a comparison of my life. So when a millionaire loses his money, it's a trauma. Okay, when a man loses, when Brad Pitt divorces Angelina Jolie, it's just as painful for him as it is for you to lose your wife. You have to listen when somebody has a pain. Everybody has a different, you have these high-end problems sometimes. You're only as sick as your secrets. I'm 100% responsible for my life. I constructed the world I live in. I make my world. When you finally take responsibility for all your actions and you're not blaming, I don't know, the person that hit me on a motorcycle was this guy that was probably 20 years old. I don't know. He just turned into me. I can't sit around and blame him. But 99% of people believe they are emotionally stable. And 99% of the time, I can find a trigger that will drive them up the wall, get angry in seconds. That, when somebody when you get angry, take a pause, a scissor in the music, a stop in the music, and say, "Why am I angry?" And then that's a moment to learn, because you just had somebody trip your trigger, right? Be real careful. If a person never feels any shame, guilt, or whatever, there's psychopaths. Those sociopaths that have no conscience. That basically, you cannot do anything. Stay away from these people. But in life, we have ultimatums, and if you give an ultimatum to your wife or your husband, and they refuse to deal with it, just run. I mean, because you have ultimatums like, put the toothpaste back, I cannot deal with this issue. Please, as your lover, please do this for me. And when they say, "Oh, you don't have any right to do that," run from these people, because there's some people that are stuck into the terrible twos of childhood that never grow up. Okay, and there's people that we need to run away from. Okay, and the world is becoming a very difficult place to do. But I'm Andy Lee Graham. I've dealt with many problems, and I still get angry. I still have problems. But when I get angry, I stop and I say, "Why am I angry?" And I ask myself, and I go through this routine. But when my mother died, I went and did a fast for 21 days because I didn't see that it was right that God took my mother from me. And I had to sit around until I heard, for 21 days, what solved me, and I started eating, is I said, made a decision to turn my will and my life over the care of God as I understood Him. I basically was trying to be in control of this situation. When I realized that I was not in control of what happened, I accepted it. But I'm still not accepting it. I mean, I still have times when I start thinking about the doctors. I still have times when I think about people that were cruel to me when I was driving around on a moped. I can remember these things. I can feel these things. And I don't stay busy and forget about it. I actually take a moment and I think about it. Sometimes I will talk it over with friends that I trust. Finding somebody that you trust anymore when the world becomes a troll is difficult. Okay, I'm Andy Lee Graham. I have a Patreon link in the description. I have a thing for consulting if people want consulting. The really wealthy people that have drug and alcohol problems, they need somebody that can think in a very complicated way, the same as they do. It's really tough for doctors and lawyers and accountants that can ruin their business if people thought that you don't want an alcoholic for a lawyer, right? Okay, I'm here and you're not. Why not? Thank you. Hit that subscribe button. I always forget to say that. Andy Lee Graham.